The best adaptations aim to elevate and enrich the original source material, as well as provide accessibility to new audiences, acting as an entry point to those unfamiliar with the story or world. Unfortunately, most video game adaptations are pretty average, often suffering from poor writing, a disregard for the source material, an inadequate budget, the miscasting of characters, or a combination of all three. Despite this, The Last of Us looks primed to break free of the curse of video game adaptations. Based on one of the greatest video games of all time, consisting of an interesting world, engaging story, and complex characters. The game provides an amazing blueprint for adaptation into a TV series. With stunning visuals, practical effects, a stellar cast, writers, directors, and the hands-on involvement of the creative director and writer of the video games, HBO's The Last of Us looks amazing. In this video, I will go over why I think this series has the correct combination of elements to break the curse of video game adaptations, and the series might go so far as to elevate the genre into prestige television. An adaptation is only as good as the original material being put to screen. If you have a pretty mid-story, you can't expect the adaptation to be the next big thing. Fortunately for The Last of Us, it is widely regarded as one of the greatest video games of all time, and in terms of storytelling, it might just be the best. For those of you unaware, The Last of Us is set in a post-apocalyptic United States, ravaged by a deadly fungal pandemic for the past 2 decades, known as the cordyceps brain infection, a parasitic fungus that is spread through bites, scratches, and fungal spores. Once infected, the human host is transformed into an aggressive zombie-like creature, with the parasite taking full control of the host body. The pandemic has left the majority of America decimated, with cities and man-made structures fallen to ruin. Despite this, humanity survives in small pockets, primarily in quarantine zones run by a totalitarian government. It is in these quarantine zones where we meet Joel, a black market smuggler who has suffered unimaginable loss, yet soldiers on in this grim future with a ruthless and cynical personality. The setup for the plot circles around Joel being tasked to escort a teenage girl named Ellie west across America, where they have to contend with not just horrific infected, but the remnants of humanity who will do just about anything to survive. At its core, the story focuses on the relationship between Joel and Ellie and the lengths one would go to survive. The timing of the release cannot be understated, and it will likely play a role in the show's success. The series being set in a world ravaged by a pandemic allows for universal accessibility, as every single person on Earth has the shared experience of living through a pandemic. This shared experience might prompt viewers who otherwise might not have been interested in the series to check it out. Additionally, with The Walking Dead having recently ended, audiences seem ready to embrace a new take on a story set in a world inhabited by zombie-like creatures. So the theme and setting of the story will likely resonate with a larger audience than if it were released pre-pandemic or while The Walking Dead was still in its heyday. But just because you have a great story doesn't mean your adaptation is going to be any good. Without the right writers, directors, and actors, an adaptation will never reach its full potential. Luckily for The Last of Us, they have some amazing writers and creators at the helm, with showrunners Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann providing the exceptional talent that will elevate the adaptation. But who are these guys, and why does it mean the show is going to be any good? Craig Mazin has been a writer, director, and occasional actor for over 20 years. And at first glance, his filmography looks pretty not great, filled with spoof movies like the Scary Movie films and comedies like The Hangover Part 2 and 3. However, his more recent work has really put him on the map. Specifically his work on the TV miniseries Chernobyl, where he is credited as the creator, writer, and executive producer. The series chronicles the devastating real-life events of the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster and the cleanup efforts that followed. The show dives into the scientific complexities of the event in a digestible and easy-to-understand manner, and tells the story of those impacted by the disaster, highlighting the corruption of the Soviet Union at the time. This series is a masterpiece and has received critical acclaim, as well as being the 5th highest rated TV show of all time, according to IMDb. Chernobyl is not just a brilliant dramatic retelling of a historical event, but a meticulously crafted mini-series comprised of amazing shots, score, and pacing. These elements really immerse the viewer to feel an array of emotions, like tense anxiety as workers must journey into the claustrophobic tunnels of the power plant to prevent an even greater catastrophe, all while a Geiger counter ticks rapidly, indicating the increasing radioactivity of the environment. It is audio-visual storytelling done perfectly. If The Last of Us is even half as good as Chernobyl, we're in for a treat. As good as Mazin's recent works are, and the promise his talent brings to the series, adaptations are often distorted by a writer or creator's ego and ambition to set their work above the original source, which often prompts story, lore, and character changes that are inconsistent with the source. Fortunately, The Last of Us likely avoids the worst of these potential changes, with the involvement of Neil Druckmann, the creative director and writer of The Last of Us Part 1 and 2 video games. Having the original creator on board to help adapt the story to a new medium is extremely promising. Druckmann's involvement ensures the story will be adapted in such a manner that will truly respect and honor what has come before. Of course, like all adaptations, there will be story and character elements that are changed or altered. We already know that some characters will have their stories expanded upon, like making Sam deaf and showing Bill and Frank's backstories. However, despite the original creator's involvement, there is one change to the show that has left fans uneasy. It has been reported that the infectious spores from the game are being excluded from the series. The presence of spores in the game requires the use of gas masks in various underground sections, as Ellie and Joel must travel through claustrophobic environments littered with the spores. The requirement for the actors in the TV series to occasionally don masks, obscuring their faces, seems to be the most logical reason for the removal of the spores. To me, it seems like a bit of a mistake to remove such a critical element of the way the infection spreads. The spores were a huge part of the game's lore. For example, the high rate of infection from airborne contamination played a big role as to how easily the world ended. As well as this, the spores offered some atmospheric and gripping moments that might be missed in the show. Druckmann stands behind the decision to remove the spores, so we will have to wait and see if the choice diminishes the adaptation or not. On to the actors. In the lead role of Joel, we have Pedro Pascal. The dude has been killing it over the last decade, from Game of Thrones to The Mandalorian. Every project he is involved in is elevated by his presence. Even when he is in an average film or TV show, he always manages to shine through as the best part. He somehow managed to bring an emotional and nuanced performance to The Mandalorian, all while wearing a bucket on his head, demonstrating he is a master at his craft and is certainly capable of portraying the world-weary Joel. Playing opposite him is Bella Ramsey as Ellie, who also has an impressive resume despite her age. Most of us probably know her from her breakout role as Lyanna Mormont, the outspoken and fierce young leader of House Mormont in the later seasons of Game of Thrones. From what I've seen from her other projects, she looks well equipped and ready to take on the emotional, complex role of Ellie. As well as this, there appears to be quite good chemistry between the two leads. The remainder of the cast looks equally stacked, with talent such as Anna Torv from Mindhunter and Nick Offerman from Parks and Rec among them. In my opinion, the combination of amazing source material, a pair of experienced and dedicated showrunners, an all-star cast, and the timing of the release indicates that the series is perfectly poised to break the curse of bad video game adaptations and might just propel the entire genre forward. But what do you think? Will the series be great, or will the deviations from the original source material bring the series down? Let me know in the comments below.